Discovered by chance at a reserved table, this woman's incredible encounter with a millionaire changes everything. The lights glimmered like stars in the vast ballroom, and the air was thick with laughter and clinking glasses. Sarah Miller smoothed her crisp white apron as she stepped into the chaos of the charity gala. As a waitress, she had waited on her fair share of high-profile events, but tonight felt different. A reserved table whispered promises of fortune and opportunity. Little did she know, the man waiting there was the elusive billionaire James Caldwell, who was as rich in secrecy as he was in dollars. Her heart raced with the weight of her responsibilities. 8-year-old Jason was home, tucked in bed with a picture of his favorite superhero. That boy's smile, full of pure joy, pushed her through her long shifts. But tonight, as she approached the reserved table, she could only think of the $5 an hour plus tips driving her. Suddenly, darkness engulfed the room. A power outage stole away the laughter, plunging everyone into uncomfortable silence. Panic swept through the crowd, but Sarah's instincts ignited. "Stay calm, everyone. Here, use your phones for light," she shouted, ushering guests with a warm smile and steady demeanor. As soft beams illuminated anxious faces, nervous laughter broke the tension. Suddenly, strangers were connecting, and Sarah felt a thrill rush through her, knowing she had made them feel a little less uneasy. In the flickering glow, Sarah caught James's eye, a striking man against the shadows. Intrigued, he observed her, captivated not just by her beauty, but by the fierce protectiveness in her gaze as she spoke about her son. It sparked something in him, a reminder of forgotten joys. When the lights flickered back to life, the gala resumed, but something had shifted. Sarah and James struck up a conversation that revealed their stark, divergent lives. With each shared story, Sarah laid bare the struggles of making ends meet, the heartbreak of single motherhood, and the dreams she had for her son. James reciprocated, peeling back the layers of his pristine facade. He spoke of the judgment he faced as a millionaire, the heavy mantle of wealth that binded him to a past of privilege and cruel decisions. But just when things seemed hopeful, a segment of Sarah's heart hardened as she uncovered James's past misdeeds, the failed businesses that left families like hers without jobs. Fury sparked in her chest. "You could change the narrative, you know," she challenged him, her voice seething with conviction. The applause following her words reverberated through the room, shattering some unseen barrier between them. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah stood radiating defiance, her heart raced, longing for a chance to trust someone who could change lives, even as her anger flared. But could the shadows of his past be etched too deep to allow for redemption? Would James rise to her challenge, or would fear of judgment seal his fate in silence? As the ballroom buzzed with applause and the atmosphere thickened with tension, both stood at a pivotal crossroads, destined for a moment that could either shatter or redefine their lives forever. James felt Sarah's fiery words wrap around him like a tight embrace, igniting a spark he thought had dimmed long ago. She glanced around the room, her usual confidence now tinged with uncertainty. The applause faded, leaving a heavy silence that hung between them. Could they really find a way through their differences? "Sometimes I feel like I'm untouchable, that my status protects me from the harsh realities out there," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The vulnerability in his tone caught Sarah off guard, and she caught herself studying him. Seeing vulnerability in a man like James Caldwell wasn't just surprising, it was refreshing. "But you," he continued, searching her gaze, "you make me want to do better." Her heartbeat quickened. There it was, a glimpse of the change she had hoped for. Yet old wounds festered in her thoughts. You can't just wish for change. It demands courage, she challenged softly, her breath hitching as she awaited his response. James held her gaze steady, determination flickering in his eyes. Then show me how to find it, he said, a plea wrapped in sincerity. The room seemed to narrow, the other guests fading into the background, leaving just the two of them in an intimate cocoon. As he spoke, Sarah felt waves of uncertainty ripple through her. What could she teach him? She was just a waitress, fighting to support her child. And yet, she remembered the drive she felt as a worker, the dreams she held tightly for Jason. You need to own the stories you've written, she replied, each word feeling unapologetically powerful. Your past can fuel your future, but you have to believe it too. Perhaps I've been looking at it the wrong way, he replied, almost to himself, as if a larger realization was emerging from within him. I've let my failures keep me captive instead of learning from them. Suddenly, a flash of conversation erupted from the guests nearby, awareness creeping back into the scene. The gala continued, oblivious to the poignant moment unfolding at the reserved table. Sarah felt a torrent of emotions bubble within her, hope, anger, and something she wasn't sure she was ready to name, trust. Do you believe in second chances? James asked, his voice breaking the tension, his eyes searching hers for answers. Everyone deserves them, James, she said. But you have to fight for them. You can't just wait for them to come knocking. Silence enveloped them again as his expression hardened. Would he turn away, retreating back into his world of wealth and guarded walls? Or could he truly embrace those second chances? A fleeting thought crossed her mind. What if he meant every word? She wanted to believe it. Wanting more for Jason was the dream that kept her moving forward. As the evening pressed on, Sarah feigned the rest of her duties, a whirlwind of plates and polite smiles, but her thoughts remained tethered to him. What did change look like for someone like James? How could he impact a life like hers? At the end of her shift, she caught a glimpse of James lingering at the table. He stood, the strong lines of his jaw set, a flicker of resolve in his gaze. I need to talk to you, he said, stepping closer. Her breath wavered in rhythm with her racing heart. Would he step outside of the confines of the gala and into a conversation that could change everything? Meet me tomorrow. We need to explore this, he urged, his voice low, filled with urgency. Explore what, exactly? She asked, her knees trembling from the weight of hope and skepticism. The possibility of change, he replied, his gaze piercing, filled with something that felt like promise. But could she trust him? As Sarah walked away that night, the questions danced through her mind like shadows under the night sky. Tomorrow could open incredible doors, or shatter the fragile trust she had just begun to build. Would she dare to step through? The next day arrived, swathed in a blanket of uncertainty. Sarah stared at her reflection in the mirror, her heart racing with anticipation. She couldn't shake the feeling that today would be different. It was a small, simple cafe where they had agreed to meet, a place that felt far removed from the opulence of the gala. She hoped the atmosphere would help ease the invisible boundaries that held her back. She stepped into the cafe, the door jingling softly as she entered. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wrapped around her like a warm hug. Her eyes immediately sought him out. There he was, James. He sat at a small table in the corner, a blue-gray shirt clinging to the well-defined contours of his chest, an open notebook before him, his eyebrows furrowed in concentration. As she approached, a wave of nerves crashed over her. How would they start? Would he still be as determined? Or would yesterday's intensity fade into polite small talk? Her stomach flipped as he looked up, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "Hey, you made it," he said, his tone lighter than she anticipated. "I wasn't sure I would," Sarah admitted, settling into the chair opposite him. "But here I am." He pushed the notebook aside, leaning forward slightly. "I want to use this time wisely. Yesterday felt significant to me, and I think we can build on that." "Build on what, exactly?" she asked, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. James hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. On understanding what it means to be vulnerable, I'm learning that it's not a sign of weakness, but a necessary step toward real growth. I want to change, but I can't do it alone. The sincerity in his eyes washed over her, diminishing her skepticism. Maybe he meant it. The thought of him making this effort, her heart swelled with an unfamiliar warmth. I can't be your guide, she replied carefully, but I can share my story. He nodded earnestly. That's exactly what I need, your perspective. So she began. With each word, she unearthed pieces of herself she had tucked away, her struggles as a single mother, her ambitions that had felt all but lost to the grind of survival. As she spoke, she saw James's expression shift. He wasn't just listening, he was absorbing, nodding at her pain, her resilience. "I never knew," he murmured, almost to himself. "It's easy to overlook the battles people like you face. I can't excuse my inaction, but I want to change that." Her gaze fell to her hands, tracing the lines of her palms. "We all have our battles, James. It's what we choose to do with them that matters." A silence enveloped them, heavy yet charged with possibility. She could feel the connection building, a bridge forming between their vastly different worlds. "I've let my past dictate my decisions for too long," he finally said, his voice steady. "But I want to be better, for you and for myself." The waitstaff moved around them, the clinks of dishes and hum of conversations blending into the backdrop. But in that moment, it was just them, lost in a newfound understanding. "Maybe together we can find a way to turn those battles into something transformative," Sarah suggested cautiously, a flicker of hope igniting. "Together," he echoed, the word hanging between them like a promise. As they shared hesitant smiles, time stretched thin, wrapping them in the vulnerability of the moment. Yet the weight of reality loomed, a reminder that change wouldn't come easy. Could they truly navigate their differences and create something beautiful from their past? Before Sarah could ponder the implications, the cafe door swung open. A commotion broke the spell they had woven, and an unfamiliar figure stepped into the light, glancing around as if searching for someone. Sarah's heart sank as recognition shattered the moment. A chaotic figure from her past, someone she had hoped to leave behind. Would this disrupt everything they had begun to build? "Sarah," the figure called out, an unsettling smile forming. The air thickened. Would this encounter turn everything upside down? Sarah's heart raced as her eyes locked onto the figure now standing at the entrance. It was Mark, the man whose presence had always threatened to unravel the delicate threads of her life. His tousled hair and confident stance seemed at odds with the burly weight of memories he carried with him. This was not a reunion she wanted to face. Not here, not now. "Sarah," he called again, his voice echoing across the cafe as if he were unaware of the gravity of the moment. Observers turned their heads, curious glances flickering over their faces. James's expression shifted immediately. The light in his eyes dimmed as he took in Sarah's pale complexion, the stiffening of her shoulders. "Do you know him?" he asked, a note of concern creeping into his voice. She stammered, the words tangling in her throat. "He's someone I used to know." How could she possibly explain Mark's impact on her life, the hurt and struggles interwoven with fleeting good times? Talking about it felt like unearthing a grave she'd thought she'd sealed shut. "Sarah, come on, you can't just ignore me," Mark insisted, striding toward the table with a swagger that made her want to shrink. They had once shared laughter, adventures, and a whirlwind romance that now felt like a distant dream, choked by betrayal and broken promises. James remained still, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. She could sense him assessing the situation, trying to find the right words to comfort her. "I really don't want to talk to you, Mark," Sarah finally managed, forcing the words out through a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm busy." "Busy with him?" He nodded toward James, a smirk spreading across his lips. "Interesting choice. What's he offering? Stability? You know you can always count on me to have your back." Tension crackled in the air. James clenched his jaw, a flicker of protectiveness sparking behind his calm demeanor. "Whoever you are, this isn't the time or place," he interjected, his voice steady yet firm. "Sarah is here on her own terms." Mark scoffed, clearly unfazed. "Oh, look at you, being all knightly. But trust me, she's already been through enough. Don't think for a second that you can save her." The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. Unshed tears pricked at the corners of her eyes as pain and anger swirled within her. Why did he always have this power over her? Why could she never shake off the past so easily? "Stop it," she shouted, the sound startling even herself. A hush fell over the cafe, eyes darting between the three of them. "You don't get to decide what I need. I'm not that person anymore." Mark's facade faltered, just for a second. She saw confusion flicker across his face, quickly masked by an arrogant grin. "And yet, here we are. Don't think I don't know who you really are." With courageous determination, a surge of defiance welled up in Sarah. "My past doesn't define me, Mark. I'm building something new now, something you can't tear down." A charged silence followed her words, the weight of their truth hanging between them. James looked at her, pride sparking in his eyes. Maybe, just maybe, she could reshape her narrative. Mark, however, wasn't finished. "You're grasping at straws, Sarah. I know you better than anyone. You can't escape your history." "No, you don't," she said softly, the quiver in her voice giving way to newfound strength. "You're a part of it, yes, but I'm reclaiming my story. You don't get to decide who I am anymore." As Mark opened his mouth to respond, she felt James's reassuring presence beside her. The realization hit her. She wasn't alone in this fight. They could stand together, challenging the shadows of their pasts. "Let's go," James whispered, gently taking her hand. With a shared glance, determination sparked. They would step into a future defined by their choices, not their histories. But just as they began to move, Sarah felt Mark's eyes burning into her back, a promise of a turbulent confrontation yet to come. Would he let her go that easily? Or was this just the beginning of a much larger battle? Their steps faltered for just a moment, uncertainty lingering. She could sense a storm brewing on the horizon, another test of their resolve. What would it take to truly break free? As they stepped away from the table, a spark of adrenaline coursed through Sarah's veins. James's grip on her hand was firm and steady, a lifeline in the midst of the brewing storm. She could feel her heartbeat thumping in her chest, drowning out the lingering whispers and stares from the cafe patrons. The world outside felt both vast and confining, a landscape of choices stretching out ahead, yet all she could see was Mark's smirk, the haunting reminder of her past. "Are you okay?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He led her through the cafe, trying to shield her from the curious gazes and the sensation of suffocating uncertainty. "No," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Not really." She felt raw, exposed. The last thing she wanted was to revisit her complications with Mark in front of James, who deserved her best self. But there was something about the way he looked at her, his concern, the way his brow furrowed as he searched her face for answers, that made her want to be honest. James paused just outside the cafe, the sun spilling down on them warmly despite the storm of emotions brewing within. "We don't have to talk about it. We can just go," he suggested softly. But there was an urgency in his tone that made her feel both safe and a bit guilty. "No, I need to," she said, taking a deep breath. "I can't just pretend that didn't happen." She felt a slight tremor in her stomach. "When Mark shows up, everything I thought I'd put behind me comes rushing to the surface. It's like he has this power over me." "Power?" James frowned. "He seems more like a bully to me." His protective instincts flared up, and she could see the anger simmering just below the surface. "He is," she replied, "but he's also someone I cared about once. It's complicated." She struggled for words, wanting to explain how love and pain could coalesce into a universe of confusion. She didn't want to drag James into her past, but how could she move forward if she kept stalling? "Listen," James said, forcing her attention back to his piercing gaze. You don't have to carry that weight alone. I'm here for you. Let's face this together. His sincerity poured over her in waves, washing away some of the panic and fear. He wasn't here just to support her. He was all in. Tears stung her eyes. I feel like I'm on a tightrope, constantly balancing between who I used to be and who I want to be. And you're doing it, he countered, his voice steady, one step at a time. What matters is that you're moving forward, even if it feels shaky. She managed a watery smile. You really believe that? Absolutely. His confidence steadied her. Taking a breath, Sarah gathered herself. Okay, let's keep walking. We can talk about this on the way to the park. As they began to stroll away from the cafe, she felt the weight of uncertainty begin to lift. The air was clearer, the path ahead less daunting. But a lingering fear gripped her heart. What if Mark followed them? What if this confrontation was only the calm before the storm? Just as they reached the entrance to the park, a familiar voice called out again. Sarah! She turned, heart sinking. There stood Mark, his confident but menacing posture silhouetted against the backdrop of the park's greenery. You can't leave just like that. We need to talk. A chill ran down her spine. What does he want now? She wondered, anxiety clawing at her. James, standing resolutely beside her, whispered, Stay close. We'll handle this. But the question hung heavy in the air. Would they really be able to handle whatever was coming? Sarah's heart raced as she prepared for the next round of her battle, the shadows of her past creeping in once more. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as Mark took a step closer. The warmth of the sun felt distant now, overshadowed by the chill that crept into the air. She wanted to melt into the ground, to disappear, but James's hand on hers was a solid reminder that she wasn't alone. Mark, she said, her voice trembling but defiant. What do you want? She didn't want to show fear, but a flicker of vulnerability betrayed her. You know why I'm here, he said, flashing that familiar smirk that twisted her stomach into knots. You can't just ignore the past, Sarah. It doesn't work that way. Mark's words hit her like a slap in the face. She had fought so hard to forget, to create a life independent of him. But here he was, as if to remind her that some battles fought within can be just as brutal, even when the enemy is only a memory. Leave her alone, James interjected, stepping. Sarah felt a mix of gratitude and fear. She appreciated his support, yet it was clear he didn't fully grasp the intensity of the situation. Mark raised an eyebrow, his expression shifting from amusement to irritation. Oh, look at you, the knight in shining armor. You really think you can protect her? She needs someone who understands her, not some new guy who thinks he knows better. Every word cut deeper than the last. Sarah's chest tightened as she felt the heat rising in her face. I'm not a child, Mark. I can take care of myself. Can you? He shot back, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You keep saying that, but here you are, trembling at the sight of me. What will it take for you to see that you're not the person you think you are? No, she whispered fiercely, shaking her head as if to physically dismiss his words. I'm more than you ever gave me credit for. I'm moving on. Then why am I still here? His tone shifted, and for just a moment she could see the mask slip. Discomfort mingled with anger, revealing a glimpse of desperation beneath. James, unwavering, kept his gaze focused on Mark. You need to step back and leave her alone. She's not your property anymore. Mark's face darkened. You don't know what you're getting into. What do you mean by that? Sarah's pulse quickened, her senses sharpening. Something loomed on the horizon, something far beyond this standoff. Mark took a deep breath, as if savoring the moment before delivering a blow. Let's just say I know things about you, about your past that you wouldn't want getting out. An icy fear gripped her heart. What could he possibly know? Had he been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike? The breath left her lungs as she processed the weight of his threat. In that second, her heart thundered in her ears, drowning out the background noise of the park. She took a step back, instinctively pulling James closer. "What are you talking about?" James spoke gently but firmly. "We don't need to hear any more of this, Sarah. Let's go." But Mark wasn't done. "You can run, but the past will always find you. Just remember that." As Mark turned to leave, the reality of his words settled around her. "What does he mean?" James asked after a beat, his voice urgent. "Do you know what he's talking about?" "Not entirely, but I think he knows something I hoped was buried." She took a shaky breath, her mind racing with possibilities. Something that could change everything. The weight of uncertainty crashed back, heavier than before. And as the shadows of doubt whispered in her ear, one thing became clear. She could no longer run from her past. As they walked further into the park, Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift. James's presence brought comfort, but her thoughts were a tempest. She thought she was prepared for confrontation, yet this was a new level of fear she hadn't anticipated. What would Mark's revelation mean for her future? A silence fell between them, heavy and thick with unspoken fears. James finally broke it, sounding unsure. "We can deal with this together, right?" But as Sarah looked into his eyes, a new wave of panic washed over her. The danger lurking just beneath the surface was still there, threatening to swallow her whole. "Together," she nodded, though doubt twisted in her gut. But what if the truth was far worse than she ever imagined? The afternoon sunlight had shifted, casting long shadows on the path as Sarah and James walked in silence. It was as if the world around them had muted itself, leaving only the rapid beating of her heart echoing in her ears. Each step she took felt heavier, burdened by the weight of Mark's words. How could he know something so personal? "Sarah, we need to talk," James said softly, glancing sideways at her. His brow was furrowed with concern. "About what?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "About Mark. What he said, it's got you shaken up, and I can't just stand by and pretend everything is fine." Her heart sank. They had just shifted from confrontation to a place she wasn't ready to explore. "He was just trying to rattle me. He has a way of twisting things." "But does he?" James pressed, his expression earnest. "You know him. If he knows something real, something that could hurt you, we need to figure it out." Sarah hesitated. The thought of unearthing whatever skeletons Mark had access to filled her with dread. What if he's just bluffing? What if it's nothing? But inside, she wasn't so sure. The memories of her past were like a tangled web, sewn together with moments she'd rather keep locked away. She had hoped those parts of her life were far behind her, lost in the fog of time. James stopped walking and turned to face her. "You can't keep pretending, Sarah. You need to confront this." His voice was steady, but held a vulnerability that made her pause. "I'm here for you, but I can't help if you don't open up." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. It was a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to embrace, trust, with anyone really. But the sincerity in James's eyes made her want to let it all pour out. "There were things I thought were buried, family troubles, mistakes I made, things that aren't just mine to carry." The words tumbled out, free yet heavy. She could see questions forming in his mind, the desire to protect her warring with the instinct to protect her. "Tell me, whatever it is, we can face it together," he encouraged, his voice softening. Taking a deep breath, she weighed her options. It was either risk the truth or stay shrouded in fear. "What if I'm not ready? What if I'm too broken?" James stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her. "Then we'll mend it together. You're more than the history that haunts you." As she leaned into his embrace, an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. Maybe he was right. Burying the past wouldn't make it go away. It was like trying to hide a storm inside, a storm that needed to break free, to cleanse her. "Okay," she finally said, pulling back to meet his gaze. "I'll tell you everything, but it won't be easy." "Nothing worth fighting for ever is," he replied with a gentle smile. But as Sarah prepared to share her secrets, the unease she felt toward Mark stayed coiled tight in her stomach. What would he do if he found out she was trying to confront her past? Just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket, a notification that made her heart lurch. She pulled it out, and the screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. "You can't hide forever, Sarah. I'm watching." A chill ran down her spine. Was it Mark? A cold sweat broke on her brow as anxiety surged through her. "Sarah," James said, sensing her shift in demeanor. I don't know who this is," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but it feels like the past is crashing down around me." The weight of her fears returned tenfold, and she clutched James's hand tighter. They had ventured into unknown territory, and she could feel the shadows of her past creeping back into her life. What have I gotten us into? But as she looked at James, determination sparked within her. This was the moment to stand her ground and face the truth, no matter how daunting it seemed. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out," James promised, "together." But could they really? And who else was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike? The storm was brewing, and Sarah felt she was at the edge, waiting for a wave to crash. How deep did the secrets go? Would facing them really unlock her path forward? Or would it drown them both? Sarah stared at her phone, the words on the screen barely making sense through the haze of panic. It felt like the walls were closing in. She glanced at James, whose brows were furrowed in concern, his grip tightening around her hand as if he could somehow shield her from whatever darkness was creeping back into her life. The moment felt heavy, almost suffocating. "I don't want you to be scared," James whispered, trying to keep the tremor from his voice. "But we can't hide from this. Not anymore." She knew he was right, but accepting it made her insides twist. How could she explain the chaos of her past, the secrets that had woven their way into her life like thorns, digging deeper every time she thought she had finally pruned them away? "Let's go somewhere private," Sarah finally suggested, her voice steadier than she felt. The bustling park around them faded. In the background, the laughter of children and the chirping of birds blurring into a distant echo. James nodded, leading her toward a shaded bench nestled under a sprawling oak tree. He guided her down gently, keeping their hands intertwined. The world outside continued as if nothing was wrong, but inside her, a hurricane was brewing. "Take a breath," he said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're safe here." She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply through her nose, then exhaling shakily through her mouth. It was a simple gesture, but as the calm began to mesh with her rising anxiety, she felt a faint flicker of courage. Okay, she muttered as she opened her eyes and met his gaze. "I need to tell you about Mark, but it's complicated. You should know I didn't choose him. He chose me. It was never what I wanted. Just start from the beginning." James's eyes were kind but intent, urging her forward. Sighing, Sarah let the words flow, recalling her teenage years with a mix of horror and sadness. "Mark entered my life when I was still figuring myself out. I was vulnerable, and he knew exactly how to manipulate that. He was charming, made me feel special, but it didn't take long for the charm to turn to control." As she spoke, her voice cracked, but James never faltered. He nodded, listening, absorbing every detail. "I thought I could escape him," she continued, voice quaking with emotion, "but every time I tried, he found a way to pull me back in. Whenever I saw even a trace of freedom, he'd make sure I felt trapped again." She felt the tears begin to spill, but fought against them. "I thought that by moving away, I'd put him behind me, but it seems I only transferred that fear somewhere else. And now he's back, lurking. How does he know about me? How could he know?" James interjected gently. "We'll figure that out. You're not alone in this." But the weight of Mark's message echoed in her mind. "I'm watching." Those words felt like a chain, weighing her down. "I don't want you to get hurt because of me," she whispered, burying her face in her hands. "What if this is all my fault? What if he comes after you?" "Stop," he said firmly, lifting her chin to meet his eyes. Nothing about this is your fault. If anyone is responsible, it's him, and you should never feel like you're the one who has to bear the burden alone. As much as she wanted to believe him, doubt crept back in. Could she really trust that they would be safe together? Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. This time, the message was even more sinister. "You know what you owe me, Sarah. Don't forget your promise." Heart racing, she turned to James, the panic evident in her wide eyes. "What does he want from me? I don't know, but we won't let him." "Control this anymore," James replied, determination flooding his features. She took a shaky breath, feeling the storm inside build to a crescendo. The stakes had suddenly raised, and she knew their fight had just begun. What more would Mark reveal? And how could she confront the darkness without losing everything? Sarah's heart thrummed in her chest, each beat overshadowed by the creeping dread of Mark's message. The words twisted around her mind like a vice, suffocating her with the weight of what lay ahead. She looked down at her phone, rubbing her thumb over the harsh white light, as if physically willing the threat to disappear. "We need a plan," James said, his voice breaking through her spiraling thoughts. "You can't face him alone, and we can't let him intimidate you." She felt a flicker of hope in his determination, but the shadows of her past loomed large. "What if he starts to target you instead? I can't bear to think of you getting hurt because of me." "We're in this together," he insisted, squeezing her hand. "Mark can't hold power over you anymore. You have a life now, Sarah. Don't let his twisted grip crush it." In that moment, her resolve hardened. Perhaps James was right. Hiding wouldn't protect her, but confronting her past just seemed so daunting. The thought of facing Mark made her stomach churn, and she fought back the urge to scream. "You said I have a life." Her voice quivered, trailing off as the reality of a fresh start came crashing in. Could she really take ownership of her future? "Then let's fight for it," he urged, eyes fierce with passion. Before she could respond, her phone rattled again. This time, it was a photo. Sarah's breath caught as she clicked it open. It was a picture of her, taken from a distance, likely during their walk in the park. Her face, pale and vulnerable, framed by the leaves of the oak tree. This isn't just a threat. He's watching me." Panic surged, ringing in her ears. James stared at the phone, face pale. "We need to go to the authorities. This is serious." "What will I say?" she shot back, her voice rising. "Oh, excuse me, officer. My ex-boyfriend is stalking me. How do I get a restraining order?" The sarcasm dripped from her words like poison. "I know it sounds bad, but we have to take this seriously," James replied, his tone steady, grounding her. "You can't let fear dictate your life. Is that what Mark wants? To keep you trapped?" Searching for reassurance in his eyes, she felt a swell of something, fierce and unyielding. It felt different than fear, like the smallest flicker of a flame that could become a roaring fire if she fed it right. "What if I do go to the police?" she asked, weighing the thought. "What if that just ignites him more?" "Then we'll prepare for it, together," James stated, unwavering. "But you need to step out of the shadows. Mark loses his power when you refuse to be his victim." Tears pooled in her eyes. Words she never thought she'd say bubbled to the surface. "You make it sound so easy. I'm terrified." James leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't have to be brave all the time. You can be scared, but you still have to act. That's the only way to reclaim your life." His words cut through the fog, clarity rising. Taking a deep breath, Sarah met James's unwavering gaze. "Okay, I'll talk to them, but you have to be with me. I can't face this alone." "Every step of the way," he affirmed, leaning forward, determination etched in every line of his face. "We'll figure this out together." In that moment, where the past collided with the hope of what lay ahead, Sarah felt a shift. Perhaps this fight was hers to claim after all. But lurking at the edge of her mind was another message, an unspoken threat hinting at worse to come. What else had Mark planned? Would her courage hold when she faced not just the man who had haunted her, but the very fears that had kept her silent for so long? The days crept by under an overwhelming weight. Despite James's unwavering support, Sarah felt engulfed by the lingering menace of Mark. Each moment felt like a tightrope walk, balancing the fragile hope of a new beginning and the heavy dread of an impending confrontation. The phone buzzed with messages, but the grip of anxiety often kept her from reading them. Finally, the day arrived when she petitioned for a restraining order. The small room at the courthouse felt sterile and cold, the air thick with tension. James stood beside her, radiating reassurance and strength, his presence a balm against her racing heart. Memories of walking through dark paths with Mark flooded her mind, but James's unwavering gaze dispelled the haunting images. "You're not alone," he whispered, his voice low and warm. "You've got this. We're in this together." The judge presiding over their case was stern, yet compassionate. As Sarah began to recount the swirling chaos of her past, she felt the emotions flood her. Each word she spoke sliced through the remnants of fear, knitting together a warm fabric of resilience. When she mentioned the messages, the photographs, the threats, she saw concern flicker over the judge's features. "Your safety is paramount," the judge said, pen poised over paper. The words brought a wave of relief that threatened to crash over her. With each passing second, Sarah felt the chains of her past rattling less fiercely. When the court granted the order, an eruption of relief exploded inside her. She exhaled deeply, shaking slightly as the weight of this small victory enveloped her. James beamed at her, pride shining in his eyes. "You did that," he said softly, pulling her into an embrace. But exhilaration faded before long, leaving tension in its wake. Mark would not back down easily. The next weeks turned into a delicate game of cat and mouse. Mark had attempted to reach out, but each message was met with silence. James encouraged her to document everything, to stand firm in her newfound power. The more they faced the threat together, the stronger and surer Sarah became, embracing her narrative. One evening, however, everything shifted. Sarah received a message from an unknown number, the words chilling her to the bone. "You can't escape your past. I'll show you." She felt her pulse quicken, anxiety creeping in like a shadow. "James?" she called out, her voice tinged with panic. He rushed to her side, concern darkening his features when he saw her pale countenance. "It's him," she whispered, barely able to keep her composure. She handed him her phone, watching as he read the message. His jaw tightened, determination lining his face. "We need to take this to the police," he stated, voice strong. "You're not facing this alone." As they headed to the police station, fear clawed at her insides. Would they take her seriously? Did she have enough evidence? But James held her hand tight, their strides synchronized, pushing back the enveloping darkness. When they arrived, she felt bravery rise within her, a fire ignited. The officer assigned to her case listened intently, noting down each detail with a steady hand. Sarah felt the tension slip, relief bubbling as she poured her story out. James stood by her, a solid wall against the tide of anxiety. "Your courage is admirable," the officer remarked, and each kind word stoked the flames of her newfound strength. After leaving the station, she felt lighter, as if a significant burden had been lifted. But comfort was short-lived. A few days later, the air shifted once again. They were walking in a nearby park, hand in hand, when a figure loomed ahead, unmistakably Mark. Panic surged within her as he approached, a twisted grin etching across his face. "Hiding behind your new boyfriend? How predictable," he sneered. But this time, Sarah stood tall, the lessons of her recent battles sharpening her resolve. An unfamiliar, unyielding strength surged within her. "I'm done being afraid of you," she declared, her voice steady and loud enough to slice through the taunting silence. James stepped slightly in front of her, an unspoken shield protecting her from Mark's menace. "Leave her alone," he said, the tone fierce like a battle cry. Mark's smirk faltered before he regained his composure. "You think this is over? I'll be back, Sarah. You can count on that." Heart-pounding, fear gnawed at her, but instead of retreating, she planted her feet firmly. "I won't hide from you. The past has no hold on me anymore." It was then she realized how far she had come, how vibrant her resolve had become. Mark scowled, stepping back, frustration etched across his features. "You're making a big mistake." But he turned abruptly and disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind a silence that felt oddly serene. With Mark gone, Sarah turned to James, relief flooding her like a warm blanket. "I did it!" she exclaimed, feeling a rush of empowerment. "You faced him," he praised, enveloping her in a hug. "I knew you could." The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of golden orange, a promise of new beginnings. Together, they walked home, hand in hand, hearts lightened by the weight they had shed. As days turned into months, Sarah found her footing, slowly reclaiming her life piece by piece. She used her experience to empower others, joining a support group for women facing similar struggles, and even volunteering at community centers. Through it all, James remained her steadfast ally. Their bond deepened, filled with laughter, growth, and mutual respect. They frequently shared dreams about the future, often weaving Jason into their plans. One night, as they watched the stars glitter brightly against the night sky, Sarah felt a swell of gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me," she said, emotion hitching her voice. James turned, his eyes reflecting sincerity. "You taught me how to believe in fighting for change, Sarah. You're an inspiration." In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of compassion and hope, Sarah knew she had truly emerged from her past. No longer defined by her struggles, she stood radiant and empowered. She could finally pen a new chapter, one filled with love, growth, and the promise of change for her and Jason. And as the night enveloped them in its embrace, Sarah smiled, filled with hope and a fearless heart ready for whatever came next. Now it's your turn. If you loved this story and want to see more incredible transformations, you need to subscribe now. Make sure to hit that button and turn on all notifications so you don't miss a single video. Leave a like to feed the algorithm and let it know how meaningful these stories are to you. And please comment your thoughts about Sarah's journey. How did it resonate with you? Don't wait, not even one more second, to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this inspirational tale. Your support means everything, and only true fans understand the importance of keeping this channel alive.